Hello, everyone. I'm Liz Castleman, Gallery Coordinator, and on behalf of Mont Community College Fine Arts Department and the Fine Arts Gallery, we welcome you to the first in-person art talk that we've been able to hold since before the pandemic. So this is very exciting for us. MCC Gallery holds exhibitions every 2 weeks in the fall and the winter semester, and James Malonebeach's work will be on display through November 1st. And then our following exhibition will be from Visiting Gallery Michigan Institute of Contemporary Artists, based out of Lansing, and will be opening November 7th. What these art talks are there are a series of conversations that feature professional artists, educators, and historians as they share their insights to their artwork and their creative processes and the research of their work. I would also like to thank the Ballinger Trust for funding today's art talk. If you have any questions that you would like to field towards the artist during the interview, if you want to raise your hand, I'll kind of spot you out and I'll come over with the microphone so you can speak into the microphone. Otherwise, the YouTube live feed won't be able to hear you. So if you do have a question, just, raise your hand and I'll come over to you kind of Haley Jesse Raphael style, which I know is a very old reference.
Yeah. Who?
But
What is that?
anyway, that's how we'll do that.
Ninja drill?
Also, just a reminder, in case your cell phones aren't on silent mode right now, if you could just do that so we don't have any interruptions during the art talk, we would greatly appreciate it. It is my pleasure today to present to you artist James Malonebeach, whose artwork is on display in the gallery right now until November 1st. James received his bachelor's degree from Bemidji State University in Bemidji, Maryland. And
Minnesota.
In Minnesota, thank you. And his Master of Arts degree at the University of Iowa City in Iowa. It was during graduate school that he moved away from kind of throwing the traditional vessels on the wheel to making three-dimensional slab constructions. His exhibition, titled 20 Days During the Pandemic, features a series of ceramic masks inspired by masks made by indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest coast. Everyone, please join me in welcoming artist James Malonebeach.
I think you have to do that louder. I love you guys. Okay, thank you for being here. It wouldn't be the same without it. Okay. I want to give some thanks out before I forget, because I will. Our neighbor Merlin Maury made the masks for all my masks. And it wouldn't be the same without those, because I think they're significant. And my wife, who turns these lectures into English if I have to write them out. English being my second language, and I don't have a first one. So, what we have here is 20 days during the pandemic. Initially, I had these masks ready to put material on because I was going to have a show in Clare, Michigan. We're equal. And we had been in Utah right before the show, barely got back. We, experienced the no food in the grocery store, no toilet paper. And it was the world had changed as we knew it. We didn't know for sure if we would get out of Utah because plane flights were just whack. I got home and I was going to do 20 masks about gun violence in America. A worthwhile, uplifting show. And I started to work on the first mask when I got home, and I couldn't do it. It wasn't what was in my head. It was this pandemic, this separate reality. So I started to put materials down on the masks daily. I would pick a mask, I would go through the New York Times and a few other newspapers and get information to put on the masks. And that felt right. But of course, by then, the show that I had been in was canceled, and they changed, and they went belly up. The woman who ran this gallery was amazing. She was a high school educator. She ran the gallery, and part of one of the courses she offered was to run a gallery. So her kids could run an artist, the gallery. They did all of it. It was amazing. So she decided, I'd rather spend time with my kids. I don't know how this is going to end up, and my grandchildren. So I had 20 masks sitting in the basement, which isn't the same at all. Now, what I wanted to start with is how I got involved in making these masks. My wife, Leanie, right here, she had gotten a little carved ivory mask from one of her brothers who live in Alaska. And on the mask, there was a little legend, and it said that the Inuits believe that every house is inhabited by a demon, which I think we can all relate to. So what they would do is they would go to the local shaman and have him make a mask. They would hang that demon mask on the wall. The demon would look in the window to see if it was inhabited, and he would see a demon already there, and he would leave. And I loved the idea of this, mask that would keep evil away. Very much like a mezuzah that Jews put on their doorway with a little, I think it's a prayer that keeps cooties away, or a crucifix, or a Lord's Prayer. We all use them. So I decided to play with that. Now, I also had someone tell me that legend is hooey. It was just for tourists. I don't care. It's a myth anyway. What the heck? If it's not a real myth, which is a contradiction in terms, I'd create my own. I didn't care. This is another one of the masks that they made to ward off evil. So I started doing some masks for everyday demons. This one is a mask about alcoholism, and it depicts 3 masks. One of them is don't feel. One of them is don't talk, and the third one is, I can't remember at the moment. Doesn't matter. It was about all those things that we deal with. Some of us more than others, some of us less. And I put them in their own lodge. And I also put things in the attic, because we've all got those little cooties in the attic too. So that was one of the first forays into making these demon masks, and they're very close to what the demon masks were. They were very simple. They had mandalas around them, and I was copying them, and I didn't feel quite right about that. But we all copy, we all steal shit, and eventually it becomes our own, and that's what the process is. So I didn't get too nervous about that. And if this is considered appropriation, all I can tell you is until I was 21, my dad told me I was Indian. And then when I was 21, he said, "No, I was just BSing you." If you've ever worked with an Indian culture, they have this great sense of humor, and which am I to believe? When he was BSing me before or later? So I choose that I had Indian blood, and and there you have it. At one time, early on, we had a friend who was one of Lenie's colleagues whose vision of life was to get her PhD, teach at a university, and grow old and get gray hair. Well, she got cancer. And she was afraid she would never have that gray hair for any number of reasons. So I offered to make a demon mask for her. So this is the demon mask I made for her. It has gray hair. It has those tubes from intravenous feeds. It has dice, and the dice are on snake eyes, because she knew what was going to happen. So that was how I did that. And this is my belief. If you have those demon masks and you believe in the power, it either helps you or it helps you get through it. As an old athlete, and I mean old, I had shirts that I would wear to matches that would somehow give me magical power. I would not be comfortable if I didn't have that shirt on. And we all have that. We all have those. When I go out for interviews, I buy a new tie. Now, they don't know that, but I'm ready. That's my talisman. So I would do that, and I believe in it. This is a piece called Travels with Dad Through Life and Death. And it was about growing up with my father, who had anger issues. He also was in the Army. I have this great photo of him in the Army, and they had that tinted stuff, that hand colorized photo, which I love the look of. So I made this piece. It's about 4.5 feet tall, out of pine, and it worked for me. This is how I used to throw before I stopped throwing. I didn't throw enough to make decent pots. They looked awesome, but they were doorstops, I got to tell you. This was about 27 inches high. It was higher than that when I made it. I didn't worry. I knew it'd fit. It wouldn't have. He had to shrink before I could bisque fire it. But I lucked out. And it's a power talisman. And I used a bear tooth wrapped around it. A copper medallion that they would have on power lines in Pennsylvania. I'm not going to discuss how I acquired that. Okay. And there's also a reflector off of an automobile. All of these are power symbols. So that's kind of, where my background was and is in clay, if that makes any sense. The woman that I studied under at Bemidji State was, she was a Bernard Leach advocate. Anybody in here doing the wheel or pottery yet? Yes? No? Nothing. Never mind, I'm not going to tell you that. But it was cool. You would have liked it. Okay. At a certain point in time, we had moved here to Mount Pleasant. And we had this friend who would quote Martha Stewart all the time. And I was pretty naive. I had no idea who the heck Martha Stewart was. So I finally asked her, who the hell's Martha Stewart? And she said, well, cooks and cleans and decorates. And I thought anyone who is venerated that much should have a reliquary. How many people know what a reliquary is? Raise your hand. Latent Catholics all. You studied art. There you go. A reliquary is an object that would hold part of a venerated person, aka a saint. So all over Europe, you can go to churches, and most of them will have a reliquary, which is an object that holds the body or a bone of a saint. Now, what they found out in the 13th century when this became cool was that if you had a reliquary of a saint in your basilica, your church, you got more money. People came in, because again, these things had magical qualities. When they would send, oh really? You didn't know? They would cure you. So when they would send out a few priests to find the bones of Saint Fred, they would, have someone with them that would miraculously, be cured from a head cold or whatever affliction they had. Some might consider that who. But you never know, okay? So I made a reliquary from Martha Stewart, and, pardon? Well, I didn't have Martha here. This is not Martha. I know. That's why the confusion, I'll bet. Pretend, if you will, you have an image of a reliquary of Martha Stewart. It's in a waffle iron. It's reportedly has some of her toenail clippings and extra virgin olive oil. Now I say reportedly, okay? When I started these things, I went to the Metropolitan and I looked at their reliquaries. One of them was this beautiful kind of chalice thing in gold and silver. And there was a real tiny little spot that reportedly had Mary Magdalene's fingernail clippings. Reportedly. You gotta love that. That means I can say anything I damn well please. All I have to do is say reportedly. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying someone reported that it was. If that's me, so be it. Okay? So I have been doing that. Making reliquaries and reporting that they're real or that they have real parts. This is the reliquary for the sacred bone of contention. How many people know what a bone of contention is? Raise your hands. Come on, don't be fearful. Yeah, I like that. So, a bone of contention is having a disagreement with someone. During the pandemic, I would go crazy because, and it still as the country is divided. During the early parts of the pandemic, there was a president who I didn't really agree with, and he encouraged that divisiveness. And it drove me nuts. So I found this bone in our garden, and it was really kind of a cool bone. So I decided it probably was the sacred bone of contention, because no one said it wasn't. And, there were people who did say it was, one in particular. So I talked about the whole process of disagreeing with someone and not being willing to listen to their side of it. And that goes with both sides. We're so conflicted now that anyone on the opposite political bent will say something and we'll go, okay? And they'll go back right at it. A few of my friends I can discuss this stuff with, and we don't agree, but we can discuss. And I think that's a huge part of what we can do as humans, is not decide, but be open to different sides. That doesn't mean we have to agree with them. But we should be able to listen. 2 cents worth of information. This is the inside. I talked about Oh, I can't remember the saint's name. I picked a saint, and that is reportedly his bone. And it's said that anyone who touches that bone is afflicted with discontent and disagreement. So it's always closed so that it's safe from people getting afflicted by it. And the type in the back is from an old typewriter. And if you've ever opened up an old typewriter and taken it apart, they're tough. It takes forever. And I had one of these, and I couldn't find it. You know, it's somewhere safe in my studio, and I think we all have a sense of what that's like. So I had to go out and buy another typewriter. Luckily, they're cheap. Take it apart, put it on this sculpture, which I love, by the way. And, of course, I'm biased. I love all my stuff. And the next day, I found the other part. It happens. Okay. Another part of what I play with in clay is I make boats that go over the river Styx. When we die and you get cremated, you can buy these what I would call really dorky looking containers to put your ashes in. So I decided that what you really needed was a boat that would get you across the river safely. And if anyone has seen movies where they've shown the river Styx, Harry Potter's one of them, it's a mean river. There's goobies in there, and they'll grab you. So I thought you need to have wheels in case you get stuck in the middle of the river. And on this one, I have an outboard motor. And this is about 27 inches high. It's got real long, skinny legs. Because it is really for me, because my legs are for, they're terrible. They don't do the job anymore. So, I always have coins on these because you need coins for the tiller man. The tiller man is going to take you over. Are there any questions? Comments? Yes. This is a shill, by the way. I love that.
I've noticed a lot of your pieces particularly have like inspiration, or is that something that really inspires you?
Religion?
Religion or just spiritual?
The short answer for religion is yes, because I have a real strong distaste for all organized religions. I like to think I'm a spiritual person, but, you know, there have been too many people killed by religions, and I just think they lose track of what they were supposed to do and who they're venerating. You know, I think Jesus was a pretty cool dude. Wore sandals, long hair. Preached against, you know, we won't even go there. But the people who profess to be Christians have forgotten who he is. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Cool beans. Okay. So, I have made a whole flotilla of boats. At first, they were just for fun because I would think some people would like to tack back and forth in the river and think about it for a while before they go to the other side. So I would put sails on them. And then I thought, you know, if they get to the other side and they change their mind, they would want to have like a skiff to cross over again. And I thought, Keith Richards has done that a number of times. So I kind of, you know, named that boat and skiff the Rolling Stones and Keith Richards' boat over the river Styx. So I'm not going to show you those because, maybe I'll be invited back. Woohoo! And I've had people who ask for these, and they don't understand the amount of time that it takes to make these. It'll take at least a week, maybe 2, to make the boat. Then it has to dry. Then you have 24 hours you have to fire it. And then you have to put stuff on it. Otherwise, it's just a piece of clay. We put the magic on it. Now, I did a series of masks a few years ago, and there were 20. It's a nice round number. And they were about significant dates in my life. Some of them international. This is about Chernobyl. Anyone who lived through all of that, it's like, oh, geez. So I would put dates on them and then information that would relate to it. Some of them were things like my father dying, my grandmother dying. Dates that are important to me, not necessarily everyone else, but there were enough of them so that I think people could relate to them. They're now hanging on the outside of our house, which looks cool, I think. But, on the other hand, I had all these masks in the basement on the floor, and I believe in them. I really love these masks. So I reached out to Jenna to see if I could acquire some time and space. Liz got a hold of me and said, we could do that. So thank you. And that got me here. That might even be the last mask. No, it's not. Ha, it tricked you. The last mask I put on there because it's a duality mask. I know, it rocks, doesn't it? I have made a couple. And I really like them because we all wear masks. Every one of us. And it's safe. You need to. Most people don't want to know how you feel. They'll ask you every day, how you doing today? They don't want to know. It's just a way of saying, how are things? Ain't that weather grand? So I played with that. I've got a couple. And technically, they're hard to make, by the way. Because I can make them, and I can make them so they kind of open. But the trick is making them so they can open instead of kind of. And I would just take a mask and hollow out more of it when I made the clay mask so it'd fit over another one. But I think this whole mask series is about letting people in a safe way. And that's all I have, except I love this. Beware of artists. They mix with all classes of society and are therefore the most dangerous. And I believe that. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, we got it going. We can rock and sock them, and they might not figure it out for a week. But then they do. They go, oh, wow. We have that power in our little pinkies, in our little minds. And art lets us do this. My parting shot is I always told my students that I do this because it keeps me a little saner. If I didn't have art, I'm not sure what I would do. But it helps me get through life, and it helps me figure out things that are ticking me off, which is awfully important. So, there you have it. I now open you up to questions, and if no one does that, I'm going to start pointing fingers and asking. Okay? The threat's out there. It's bold, and I mean it. So, questions, comments, criticisms. I'm easy. Yes?
So with your mask pieces, some of them have where the mask comes below the nose. I wanted to know if there was a specific reason why some of them do or not.
Oh, you bet. I'm a pretty calm guy. Calm might be the wrong word, but I'm not. I'm not filled with anger. But during the pandemic, when people would have, things below their nose, or, they would have it down their throat, and I get so ticked. In my head, I was going, and that's the way it was. So when I put these masks on, and I could have put them all on accurately, but that wasn't what I saw. There were always that different, range of, I refuse to do this for whatever reason. And that was why. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
So you have 20 masks of COVID. Is that 20 consecutive days?
Yes. I had the masks made. I had fired them. I put the posts on and the grapevines, but they were, and I put on a bronze patina. I like the looks. And every day that I was home, I would do a new mask. So there is a progression. If you take the time to read the articles on there, or there are more titles for articles than necessarily articles. They have a progression, and they have numbers on the back, so I wouldn't forget that. And sometimes, this is one of the gentlemen that helped me put this show together, Rockin' and Sockin'. They were awesome. Another question, comment, or criticism? Yes.
On the masks, there are various images pasted onto them apart from the headlines.
Yes.
What influenced some of those?
For me, it was what the article was saying, or what it might have even been the fear of the day. Because when you went through this, there were days when you were just filled with fear about something. So it symbolized fear most of the time, sometimes bewilderment, but it was all there. And for people who weren't afraid during that time, I applaud you. That's cool. Yes.
Another thing I noticed is that Batman was on a few of the masks, like he was repeated. Was he like another layer of protection, possibly?
Yes, he's a savior, dude. I tell you, you got him on your side, and he's rocking and socking. I use comic book characters a lot because when I was a kid, I used to buy comics. What I realized later was that the comics that I bought determined who the artist was. Because some of the artists were terrible. The guy who did Spider-Man, he was terrible. But at one time, Neil Adams did Batman, and Batman never looked meaner. Man, was he impressive. He was this big Hulk, muscle, a lot of hair on his chest, ticked off all the time. Yeah, it was cool. Another question, comment, or criticism?
Do you have like a studio where you make your masks, or do you do it all at home?
Yes. I have two studios at home. We made a clay studio out in our garage at one point that's heated, has running water. It's awesome.
Nice.
I have a wheel. I have a kiln. Glaces. Sometimes I'll make a bunch of, clay vessels for Christmas because you always need a new vessel.
Right.
In the basement, I have a metalsmithing studio where I make metals. I make metals for ordinary heroism. By the way, I belong to an organization called Feed 'em. Every 2 years, they have a world show on artistic medals, like the Nobel Peace Prize. You get a fancy medal when you get the bucks. Okay? That's created by some of these people. And I would always tell my students, high school students, these guys are amazing. Okay? They've got skill up the yin-yang. But a lot of them have forgotten about what they're supposed to be doing. And that is making a statement. I said, you guys don't have the skill, but you got the angst. I'll tell you, you got emotions just popping all over the place. If you do an intimate medal, but one that's safe for you, I give you a good chance of getting in, because emotion trumps quality. Craftsmanship, I guess. Now, some of these guys, they've got the craftsmanship and they rock and sock. They do medals that are just amazing. But there are like 34 countries and a lot of museums that go there to buy stuff for the museum. That's pretty cool stuff. You guys could do that. I've had over 8 students that got in. Not because of me, because they had courage enough to make an intimate medal. So I would urge you to do that, and I can send information so you can get it, because it's cool. The next show, which is too late for you, sorry, is in Florence. And we're not talking Michigan. Okay? So, I'll send you that information. You'll have time enough to think about it. The size maxes out at 6 inches square. 6 inches in any one direction. If it's larger than that, they get real pissy about it and they won't accept it. I have issue with that, but well, you know, what are you gonna do? Anybody else? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I just got a chance to go through the show yesterday and it knocked my socks off. I thought it was wonderful.
I hope you got socks back on.
No.
No.
But I also wanted to say the piece that you made for your friend. I have
Yes.
a personal connection with cancer, and that just about made me cry, and I thought it was wonderful. It was a wonderful thing to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the caged bird sculpture that you created?
Yes, that'd be great. To be honest, I made that because it was just fun. I used a paddle-billed stork, I think the name of as a starting point. But I didn't want it to look that accurate. What I really wanted it to look was mean. And those storks look like they're ready to rip your throat out. So I made this clay stork-esque thing, put it together because I bought a bird cage for $5 at a garage sale. And I put the bird in there and it didn't fit. And I thought, nuts. But then I liked how it looked when it didn't fit. And it's how we all felt during the pandemic when we were locked in and we couldn't go anywhere. And then I thought, so how do these poor guys in prison feel? God, that's got to drive you crazy. And if you're in solitaire, I don't know about you, but not talking to people during the pandemic, I started to forget my language. I would be talking, and I still am, by the way. I'll go, never mind. And it'd be right on the edge, but it wouldn't get close enough so I could grab onto it. And, we don't need to do that. We don't need to incarcerate people. Now, we may have needed to be incarcerated. I'm not suggesting that we didn't. But it was temporary. You know, it wasn't for 20 years. So that was why I did that. It was really kind of a statement about being incarcerated. Oh boy.
I was waiting till my students all ask questions and stuff too. I have two things. I
Yes.
was only going to ask you about one, but then as you discussed,
Oh, we got time. What the heck?
and they're very different.
Maybe not.
One is the conceptual nature of your work, and the other is the cathartic nature of the production of that work.
Okay, first part of that again.
I'm looking for you to ask. I'm asking you if you talk about the conceptual nature of your work, and then the cathartic nature of its creation.
Catharsis on my work is primary, I think, to be honest. And the conceptual it's just how I think. You know, whenever we talk to artists and we really like their imagery, and we say, how do you do that? It's just how I think. My wife, Leanie, does stick figures with amazing clarity of emotion. And it's just, and she thinks it's nothing because it's how she thinks. But they're beautiful. They're amazing. And I think we all feel that way about different artists. It's just, oh my God, how do you do that? It's not my fault. It's just how I think. I just visited a friend a few months ago in Wolverhampton, England. He's been a dear friend for over 20 years. He can no longer make these FEDM shows, so I don't get to see him. And he's starting to lose his faculties. So I went to see him because I knew that I wouldn't see him any other way. And at one point, he's out in his English garden looking for a key. And he has that baffled look on his face. And you just know he's gone. He's out there going, why am I even out here? And I had to go back to my hotel room and do a sketch of a piece about him. And I could not do it. And I was asked to do a talk on that, a virtual one. And I said I have to think about that because it's so intimate. But I did. And a lot of these people on that talk, they knew Ron. And it was a very similar response to yours. It brought some of them to tears. Me too, when I was talking about it, for that matter. So yeah, I do this for me. I don't care about anybody else. I like it if you like it. But it's not why I do it. It's all about me. Anything else? I think we're running out of time and you guys have to go somewhere. Is that accurate, or am I lying and I can still hold you?
As we wrap up, do you have any last parting words of wisdom for the young and budding upcoming artist?
I'd say keep at it. I've had the luxury of being able to teach for 38 years, which I loved. It was so cool. Hard work. Oh my God, but very cool. And that I could make my art not worry about whether it's sold, because it doesn't. I have the largest collection of Malonebeaches in the world, by far. Luckily, I work pretty small. So keep at it. Keep at it and be true to your art. That doesn't mean you can't take criticism. Matter of fact, it means you should. And I really mean critique, not criticism. Have someone tell you why they like it or why they don't. It's so seldom you get to hear that. Mostly it's, oh, that was real nice, or got to get out of here. So do that. Okay? I appreciate you guys coming. Thank you. You're a good crew.
So before you wrap up, I wanted to just comment then, if I may. What it sounds like you're really practicing or encouraging the students and all of us as artists to do is to allow ourselves to become vulnerable through our art
Oh, yes.
and just sort of pour that into it. And the cathartic nature of it is sort of what I would like to call casting off. If I can get it out of me,
Getting rid of the cooties.
then it's not eating me alive, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then of course the other side of that, either whether you're a fine artist or a graphic designer, is that you sort of have to then, once you've got it there, say, okay,
Do you realize what you just said?
I'm not personal anymore. It's there. Now it's up to the artist to.
I apologize to all the graphic artists for that minor mistake. You're all artists, guys and gals.
Yeah.
It's just a different media.
It's right, but the difference in this case for the designers is they have usually a public audience, that is
Yes.
that is targeted usually. And so what I'm trying to get the students to do is sort of not play it safe so much, and let some of their own vulnerabilities come out in their work. And then there's a moment where you kind of have to put up a bit of a shield to say, okay, now it's up to you to interpret.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take it personally anymore. I'm just
I
gonna go
agree.
in.
And it's, you always should take risks, but safe ones. That's the key. Don't go out and, the next guy you walk into or girl and just spill your guts out. That's just a little silly. But there are times when you can, and I would urge you to do it. Jenna, you have the mic. Not even close.
As one of his students, he was my advisor in undergrad, so there's that. And because of him, I fell in love with metals. So, and little commercial, we will have a metal studio up and running so you can do metals. But
Cool stuff.
he is, if I am half the teacher he is one of the biggest reasons that I am the teacher that I am. So, and it was fun. It's funny because you just gave the take risks, and anyone remember that? I'm always saying that. Don't use your first idea. Yeah. So, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. She is twice the educator I ever was, by the by.
Let's all give James a round of applause. Thank you so much. And James's exhibition is on display in the gallery until November 1st. So if you have not gotten a chance to walk through, please, after the art talk, go ahead and do so. And look at his work. We have flyers out front too, and he'll be here for another couple minutes. So if you want him to sign a flyer, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to do that as well. So thank you again, James.
Thank you. It was fun.
And good day and good art to you all.